Good evening, Bahrain. I'm Bernadette from Gulf Brands International, and this is episode 9 of Wine Online Wednesday. And today we are doing fantastic grapes and where to find them. So we're going to have a little bit of fun today. We're going to start with a lovely white wine called Viognier. You don't pronounce the R at the end, so it's Viognier. And yes, sounds very French. That is because it was originally French. From the Rhone Valley. Legend says the grape was brought over with the Romans when they were rampaging through Europe, but that was just a legend. In reality, it dates from the 18th century, and it's actually a distant cousin of the Shiraz grape. Unusual, red grape, white grape. The genes got a little bit mixed up along the way. So its true home is in the Rhone Valley towards the south of France, producing heady aromatic white wines, and to the extent that the Condrieu appellation is only allowed there to have 100% Viognier grapes, so they're almost hedonistic in style. So that was the spiritual home up until the 1980s. So a comparatively new development in viticulture was that Viognier started appearing in various areas around the world. And we're going to take an example from Australia. Can't go much further than that. So in Australia, we go to the state of Victoria, north, and there's an area called Murray-Darling, which is now a very significant area for grape production. But let's go right back a few hundred years, and it was just a desolate area. Rejuvenation started there with the former Prime Minister of Australia, who was called Alfred Deakin. So this happened around the 1880s. He completely injected a lot of investment into the area, and it became very significant for agriculture, growing an awful lot of food in the area of the state. In 1967, the property from where this wine comes was purchased and was originally created as a farm for table grapes and other fruits. And it was at that time named as Deacon Estate in honor of Alfred Deakin, who had done so much for the area. Then it became a winery in 1990. And lo and behold, Viognier was planted. So let's get on to the wine itself. So we can see it's a lovely buttery golden colour, very nice, and lovely clear edges, looking really clean. Okay, let's see what it's like on the nose. Lovely fruit, a little bit of tropical fruit, a little bit of lychee, and flowers, white flowers, full bloom honeysuckle, lily of the valley. Oh yeah, very nice. And yeah, let's get on to the palate. Oh, the lychees are jumping up and down here. White peaches, lychees, and citrus. Definitely, it's lemon, but nothing like a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, where you're talking really full-on citrus. This is a lovely round, subtle citrus, and this is actually okay. So it's quite a short finish. I can still taste it, but I think I'd like another little sip actually. It fills your mouth. Now, a lot of white wines, especially dry style white wines, take a sip and it's gone. This is still lingering in your mouth. The reason for this is, as it's being fermented, it's fermented on the lees. The lees are the little bits of yeast which are in the whole wine mixture while it's fermenting. They come down to the bottom of the tank, and it just gives it a more biscuity, rounded flavour. Then once the wine is ready, it's pumped away from it, so you won't see any sediments or anything in it. It just adds a boost of extra flavour. The reason it does so well at Deacon Estate is the temperature and the climate there is very special. Australia in general is very hot, and if you plant Viognier in the wrong place, you end up with a heavy, flabby wine. This is light, it's full of flavour, but it's actually quite light and quite crisp. The reason for this is, as they love to show off on their bottle, this is the Murray River, and they call it from river to vine. The vineyards are just a short way away from the river. The reason and how that benefits then is you've got lovely hot summer days and cool nights, because the water, the body of water going through the area, cools down the temperature at night, keeps the acidity of the wine just nicely balanced. I think this would be nice with seafood. I think it's very seafood friendly, but it must be grilled seafood or barbecued. You want that little bit of extra depth of flavour, not poached or steamed seafood. No way, wouldn't work with it. Can take on some Asian flavours as well. I don't think it would be happy with cheese. No, not at all. But it's so mouth-filling. I think this is a lovely evening wine, just for sipping on its own, or with maybe some little tapas or something beside you. Yeah, I think that would work quite well. So, where are we going next? We're going back up above the equator, and we're going to the south of France again. Now a little bit more north than where the Rhone region I was talking about. And we're going to Beaujolais. Beaujolais, the south of Burgundy, and the Beaujolais is made from the Gamay grape. This is a funky grape that originally was planted throughout Burgundy, but it was probably from the 1300s. Okay, after the Great Plague of Europe, that's when a lot of Beaujolais was planted, among Pinot Noir in Burgundy. Pinot Noir was considered more elevated, and Beaujolais was considered more easygoing. After some time, the Duke of Burgundy decided he didn't want this lower class wine among the Pinot Noir vines, and in 1395 he ordered all the vines to be ripped up. Unfortunately, it happened, and Burgundy became almost purely Pinot Noir. However, there were still some rebellious vines hanging around in Beaujolais, and they managed to get away with persecution until 1937, when it got its own PDO, which considered it's a protected area of origin, and Beaujolais could only have Gamay, can only be made from the Gamay grape. So this grape has lived quite happily in Beaujolais, and you don't really see it in other areas. There's a little bit being made in North America, but really and truly its soul, heart and soul, is in the Beaujolais region. So let's see how it tastes. Okay, we've got a lovely deep red and some nice little edges around here, garnety colour. Sorry, I went straight in for a sip. On the nose, you've got fruit, but it's cherries and a little hint of vegetal greenness. This is coming through, and it's coming through the same in the palate. I think this is coming from the fact that when this wine is being made, the grapes are crushed with the stems, whole bunches of the grapes. So the grapes are picked into their little boxes, and then the whole thing is crushed. So you're getting some greenness, few leaves and that from the crushing, and that's having an effect on the taste. There's a slight aroma of roses coming through. The finish is a bit tart, and it's got pepper. Yeah, it's got a little bit of white pepper, ever so slightly bitter. Now this is such a flexible wine. You can really do a lot with this. You can chill this wine. So actually this glass I'm enjoying here, I'd already chilled it before we started. Don't leave it in the fridge or anything. You just need maybe 15-20 minutes in the fridge. If you're in a hurry, Fill up an ice bucket as high as you can, because you want to, with ice and water. So you want lots of room for the ice and water, because you want to immerse the bottle as much as possible. If you're in a hurry, a good trick is put it in for about 5 minutes or so. And like I've done here, turn it upside down for another 5 minutes. So we're chilling all the liquid in the bottle. That's just a little trick. Make sure the bottle's closed tightly when you put it in, otherwise you could have a tragedy on your hands. So what are we going to eat with this? This is picnic wine. This will go with light dishes, easygoing. Again, I think this is good for somebody who, they're a red wine drinker, but they're finding the heat, especially at the moment, is just too cloying, and they just, oh, I can't face a glass of wine. I don't drink white wine, but I can't face a glass of red wine. Try this, lightly chilled. I think it should go down well. Now, I'm getting more of the nose developing now. This wine does need to have an extra swirl, and you'll see it developing in the glass. Possibly the reason as well is that this is Les Pivoines. It's a lovely little wine, and it's actually Beaujolais Villages. So on the lower area of the Beaujolais region, you have the ordinary Beaujolais wine, but then you go up on the slopes, higher up, and you get the village. Village literally meaning the villages of Beaujolais. So these are the little areas where higher quality grapes are produced, and you find a better quality wine. Alcohol content is a little bit higher as well. And you will also find from specific villages like Fleury, Brouilly, and a few others, wines that can age for 6, 7, 8 years or more. But I think this is wine to enjoy in the here and now with a good picnic. Okay, so we've gone from, now we're moving to Austria, which is not the most a country that springs to mind for drinking wine, but the winemaking history in Austria goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. We're going to talk about a grape called Blauer Zweigelt. Yes, I know, it's a bit of a mouthful. After a glass, it will come through much more fluidly. So this is a grape that it's actually quite fun compared to the other two. So we're talking about grapes with a long history. This grape is a man-made grape. This grape was created in 1922 by Dr. Friedrich Zweigelt. And at the time, it was called the unfortunate name of Rotberger, which is not the most appetizing name of a grape. I'll have a glass of Rotberger. Doesn't really sound that great. He crossed two of the local grapes to produce this grape. Why? He wanted a dry wine, but that still had the right fruit flavors, and it would have enough tannin that the wine could age. So it was quite an interesting experiment for him, and a very successful one. So successful that in 1975 it was finally, Rotberger was removed as the name, and it was given the Blauer Zweigelt. Blauer meaning blue-grey, because the grapes themselves have a hint of that colour. And Dr. Zweigelt is honoured with a wine named after him. This particular one we have here is from Lenz Moser. Lenz Moser is now the biggest producer of wine in Austria. Goes back very long history in time, going back to 1849, the winery was founded, and made a very interesting contribution to viticulture in Austria in the 1950s, because they invented it's called high culture. So you've seen grapevines growing. They let them grow higher and higher and higher till they were very high off the ground, and then let the grapes hang down. The reason for this is Austria, not exactly the warmest country. The grapes need as much sun and light as they can get. So being elevated off the ground, they were able to catch the rays of rising and setting sun very low on the horizon, rather than if they're down on the ground itself. So Lenz Moser invented this technique, and it's now used for about 95% of the grapes grown throughout Austria. So he had a massive influence on grapes at the time, on viticulture at the time. So let's have a look. Oh, now if we look at the two reds together, we're seeing brownish edges on the Zweigelt, showing it's a little bit older, which indeed it is. This is 2012. You can see, and even right through to the edges, you've got that lovely colour. So how is it on the nose? Violets, flowers, a little bit of fruit, but it's cooked, stewed fruit, not fresh fruit, not freshly picked. A compote of fruit, a little bit of sugar, but not sweet. But definitely a little hint as well of black pepper. Okay, we've got to taste this. Same flavours rolling through, and you get some tannin. You get a little tick, but very subtle, very soft tannin. It just adds some complexity to the wine, and this reminds me of if you're drinking an easygoing Bordeaux, very light, gentle, entry-level Bordeaux. The ones where there's a little bit of Cabernet Franc in the blend, you're getting that little savoury note coming through here from the tannins. I think this would go really well with game, you know, like a pheasant, quail, those kind of meats roasted. And again, this is an interesting one. I can imagine salmon, but pan-fried, where the skin is really, really crispy and it's been seasoned, heavily seasoned, probably Asian spices and seasonings. Usually if you have a red wine with fish, it will fight. The flavors will, the red wine, the tannins will fight with the fish flavors. So a nice fatty salmon with this, I think, will go down a treat. Part of the tannins as well are coming from oak. This wine has had some oak, but in a very large barrel, so not too much oak contact. And again, Lenz Moser is known for his love of oak. A few years ago, they custom made a barrel called the 1000 bucket barrel. So you can imagine, it is absolutely massive. The wine that they've released from this barrel is called Noah, because I think he thought this barrel is an ark or something. This is a cheese-friendly wine. This wine would love cheese, definitely. So if we look at our three wines, they've all got totally different flavors going on. And I think what's interesting is the Pivoines Beaujolais Villages is actually the lowest alcohol. Right? Then we move on to our Zweigelt. It's 13%, but gives a hint it could be more. And then this is the interesting one. The Viognier is 14%. That's where all that mouth filling is coming from. Wow, very interesting. So our fantastic grapes, I think that each of them deserves a nice little beastie. So for the Viognier, I'm thinking of Homer's Odysseus and the sirens who would seductively sing to the sailors and bring them to their doom on the rocks. So yeah, this is a seductive wine. This is the siren. The Beaujolais Village, the Gamay, I think this is playful. I think this is a niffler from the movie Fantastic Beasts, who's like a little platypus who likes stealing gold and jewellery from everyone, and he doesn't like it when you make him give it back. So I think this is quite a playful wine. It can suit a red wine drinker. It's good for a picnic. Yeah, definitely. And finally, our Zweigelt. A little bit more serious, a little bit more, the dryness carries through in this wine. I think this has got to be the Loch Ness Monster. But at the same time, it's got a little sweet and sour balance going on here. So I think it's a wine that doesn't want to be taken seriously. So I'll still call it the Loch Ness Monster, but like the locals do, I think it's the wee Nessie. I think we'll stick with this one for our fantastic beast. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed the beasties tonight. And join us next week. We'll be California dreaming. We'll be going to one winery on the west coast and looking at a few interesting wines.